lingered, through my group as well.
Thank you.
And so that happened to Dr. Williams all the time. And then everybody would know about it. We'd all burst out laughing, later. But that was his reputation. I was down in Miami with him at a convention. And he was speaking to about 300 people that he didn't know. And the first thing he did is always light his pipe. And then he commenced to tell some kind of a silly joke. Well, we had spread the word that no one was going to respond to that joke. And so that's exactly what happened. And then about 5 minutes later, everybody burst into applause. And he says to the group, he says, "Now I know I'm welcome." Well, one of the things he used to tell us as students is when you want to cover material, be sure that you don't cover it all without uncovering anything. So I'm going to uncover it all tonight, and then we're going to cover it in greater detail. Who do you think of when you think of, where's that little town in Missouri?
Hannibal.
When you think of Hannibal, Missouri, who do you think of first? Charlene.
Truman.
You're way ahead of me. Who do you think of?
Mark Twain.
Yeah, well,
General Hannibal.
yeah, okay, Mark Twain.
Daryl Hannah.
Daryl Hannibal.
Mark
good.
Twain,
Yeah,
electric.
electric.
Mark Twain.
This is gonna be a good group tonight.
I'm not gonna ask you more questions.
Sure you are.
But you got that right, but it wasn't who I was thinking. I was thinking of Charlene. She was
Stubborn
born there.
Missouri mules.
Yes,
No way.
yes they are.
Now, her first ambition was to work with the hogs close by.
It was never an ambition, but it did.
And see, toward the day when she used to be involved with nursing the piglets.
Yep.
If that's what you call them.
Pigs in the kitchen.
And later she graduated into something a little different and began to teach school. She taught biology for many years. I won't need to mention how many. Before she came to us in Lake Lure. And of course, when she came to us here at the lake, she decided she didn't want to be poor anymore and got into real estate, and which she has excelled in terrifically. And got with Williams, Keller Williams.
Well, we started, remember when Ken Jordan had the late guys?
Yes.
It started with Ken for 3 years, and then I went to Keller Williams,
Uh-huh.
and then we opened an office here, and then Julie came on board. Julie had been Keller Williams in Charlotte. And then when I decided I just couldn't do this, I still wanted to sell, still wanted to work. But when the cancer was diagnosed, I knew I didn't have the stamina for the rest of it. Julie bought the business, so I work for Julie now.
Just a
Okay.
little role
Are you stealing his
reversal.
thunder?
Yeah,
Are you
exactly.
stealing his thunder?
I'm sorry?
You're stealing his thunder?
Am I hearing thunder?
You're stealing his thunder.
Just go ahead. Just ignore him.
Well, you should have been here the night that Nancy introduced herself when I was trying to do it.
Oh,
That's
gosh.
okay.
I can only imagine.
When I first got to the church, I didn't know who Charlene was, but somebody got the word to me that she'd really involved with this ugly thing called cancer. And I think Joanne got us organized, and one cold night, we went out to do a little serenading. Do you remember that?
We did, Christmas Carol.
Is that microphone working?
Beautiful.
I'll speak up if it's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ken Carroll.
But we did go caroling, and I recall hoping that the verses would end because I was standing there just shivering. And at the very end, not expecting to see Charlene, we did. She appeared up in the high.
Yeah, up the balcony outside.
Hey, I have a video of that.
Yeah.
Pardon?
I have a video of that.
Yeah.
She was there.
She was.
She was there helping her.
Julie and Lisa hauled me out. I kept thinking, they need to go home, I need to lay
How many years
down.
ago was this? 3 years ago?
Yes, it was a beautiful evening.
Okay. Well, we came to be helped out and be a little inspiring. And it turned out after her words that we were more inspired than she. And I left that evening thinking, that woman's got spunk.
Absolutely. Does have some. Amen. Lots of.
All right, that's the covering it all without uncovering anything. You can uncover the rest.
Sure. Sure, thanks, Carl. Can we bump this over a little bit? Thank you. Do I have to use the microphone? Can you hear me without the microphone?
You can take it off the stand. Take it off the stand. Put it way
Just
down.
put it way down.
Just closer to the table.
Well, she's got, well, I know she's got a chair there, but I mean, she can take it off.
Yes.
That's it.
Gotta redecorate, you know, like nothing can stay the same. So, as Carl said, I was born in Hannibal, Missouri, the Show Me State. And I was actually born April 11th, 1945, which was the year before FDR died, the day before FDR died. And I can remember as a little girl my mother saying, "Honey, he was waiting for you." He had to wait till he knew there was somebody here to take over and then he could leave. So a lot of inspiration from my mom. So born and raised in Hannibal, Missouri, a little town of 18,000 that everybody remembers, Mark Twain and the Tales of Huckleberry Finn and so forth. And you know, when you grow up in a hometown of somebody really famous, you don't really realize the impact of it until you're older. So it wasn't until high school that I went through and did the tour of all the home and the whole 9 yards like that. But a wonderful idyllic town when I was growing up, and great place to raise the boys. So born and raised in Hannibal, lived there till I was 40. I was second of 4 kids to my parents, whose names were very unusual: Hazel and Seaburn Smashing. This was my mom when she was 16.
So look
And,
like somebody you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful, inspiring woman. I don't have a big one of my dad. Somewhere I didn't dig deep enough to find Dad's picture, I guess. Dad was a Marine. He served in World War II. Mother was a very hardworking, friendly, talented woman who could do anything. And she worked the whole time. I never remember a time when my mom didn't work. So again, she was very inspiring. Wonderful country cook. And we all grew up well fed. They had more kids than money, but somehow she managed to make it stretch and everything tasted good. So I was married before I even knew there was a Betty Crocker. But I learned Betty Crocker. We lived in a little town again, and as small as Hannibal was, it had a little adjoining area called Oakwood, which is where we lived. And all the streets were gravel. We had a pasture at the end of our street, a pasture on the other side of that street, and the neighbors had cows and chickens and all this in the city limits. So we got our eggs and milk from our neighbors and checked in with the neighbor at the top of the hill when we got home from school, so they would know we were okay. We were born and raised in a time when they didn't have public kindergartens. Anybody remember that? Before kindergarten?
Yeah, we kindergarten.
Before public kindergartens?
Yeah,
So we lived in the country, and I was 4, and my older sister Carolyn was 5. Pop, you want to hand some of these pictures out? I'm going to pass some of these photos out, and just pass them around as you want. This was me as a baby.
So this is kind of like the
No,
family.
you gotta go. That's older. That's later. So just start passing them
So
around.
this is you and your sister Carolyn?
Just hand them around, honey, all together.
Interesting hairdos.
So when I was 4, my sister was 5. She was allowed to go to 1st grade.
That's
And
old Grandma's
Mom, and
special.
again, we lived in the country. So Mom would tell me when it was time for the school bus to come.
This is her mother.
And I'd run out and stand and wait for Carolyn to get home. And I'd jump up and down and say, "Carolyn, Carolyn, what'd you learn today? What'd you learn today?" And she'd teach me what she learned today. So she's 5, I'm 4,
So this is the
and I'm learning her 1st grade stuff. So she taught me to read, and I have had a book with me ever since. You rarely see me without a book. So my love of reading began with my 5-year-old sister when I was 4. Our first 3 years of school, we went to a traditional classroom, and I purely loved school. Loved my 1st grade teacher.
This is your dad.
Scared witless, honey, just hand them out. Scared witless of my 2nd grade teacher. She was very strict.
This is your first condo.
And a tall, big lady. And one year in 2nd grade, a bunch of us classmates decided we were going to get on the teeter-totter. And we didn't know Miss Williams was watching from the window. And so when we came back into the class, she got on to us about everybody piling on that teeter-totter. "You don't do that," on, and she was reaming us out. And she said, she looked at me and she said, "Now, were you there among them?" And I lied, because I didn't want to get in trouble. And I said, "No, Miss Williams." She'd already seen me, so I was fine. She said, "Charlene, come up here." She stood me in from the corner in front of the class in my white eyelet dress. You know how you remember things like that? Stood there in my little white eyelet dress Mom had made, and I was so embarrassed. Never lied again, let me tell you that. So if I tell you anything, she taught me not to do that. When I was about 9, my folks decided to buy a business. They had 4 kids, built-in labor, right? So they bought a business. And the business was a combination. It was a dairy store on one end of the building, restaurant on one end of the building, gas station, and a trailer park behind us. And Dad believed in working the kids because you'd stay out of trouble if you worked. He was right. So we all worked and did various things. And my older sister and I washed a lot of windshields on semi-trailers. So we would,
Those are hard to do.
those are hard. So we wore pants, of course, slacks. You have to crawl up on the hood to reach out of there. So that was back in the era when you got your windshields washed and your gas pumped and all that. And learned to work with customers. Caroline and I waited on tables. Mom was the cook, and we had blue plate specials on almost all the meals were 90 cents to $1.25. That was a long time ago. So when they bought the farm, at the same time they bought a little 30-acre farm rather, and an old rundown farmhouse that we moved into. Well, we weren't in the town limits anymore, so we had to go to the country school. That was back when they had one-room country schoolhouses. So my 4th through the 8th grade, I was in a one-room country schoolhouse. All my 3 brothers and sisters were together. Now, by the time you got home, Mom and Dad knew everything you did that day. So thanks to Ms. Williams, there was no need to lie anymore. But it was arranged such that the classes sat together in your little desk. There was a cloakroom when you walked in the front of the school, then the classroom, and then there was a little workroom that Ms. Davis had. And our teacher was probably in her 50s, I would guess, but she looked about 80 to me at that time, and she had really arthritic hands, so ugly. But she had the most beautiful cursive writing. And the Palmer letters were above the chalkboard, remember those? So we learned to write, and we followed Miss Davis's example. So I don't write as pretty as she did, but she was an inspiration. So you're sitting in with your little class, there were always 4 in my class, going through those grades. And I was always the only girl, which wasn't especially a good thing. But when you finished your work, if you had time left over, Ms. Williams would let you help. So I felt like such a big girl. I got to run the mimeograph machine, and we got to work with the little ones and help them with whatever studies they needed. And by the time you'd sat through, you recite with your class math and then history or whatever. And by the time you hit 8th grade, you'd heard all this repeated year after year. If you hadn't had it by 8th grade, you weren't going to get it. So learning by repetition really is a good thing. So I'm about 9 when they bought the business, bought the little farm, and Dad thought we should all keep real busy all the time. So one summer he got 4 shovels and led us to the door that was at the crawl space of our house. And our job that summer was to dig out the basement.
Oh my God.
So with 4 shovels, actually 3, we girls dug most of it, and Bob, one boy. So we dug out the basement that summer. Hated it. We didn't cuss, we didn't swear because Mom and Dad would find out, but we weren't very happy about it. So finally we got that dug out to pretty much Dad's satisfaction. And then the next summer, Mom had a little bit of a garden space tilled up, and I love to garden. So I asked my dad one year if I could plant some tomatoes. And he said, well, sure. So I used my allowance. We got 50 cents allowance a week. I used my allowance, and I bought tomato seeds. And I went out and I got the ground ready, and I planted my seeds. A few weeks later, my dad came and he said, honey, show Dad where you planted those tomatoes. So I took him out. I'm so proud, and they're growing. They're up about like this by now. And he looked and he said, how far did you plant? Turns out I planted almost 2 acres of tomatoes. I didn't know. The ground was there and nothing was on it, so we planted. Big boy, but we have Missouri Supreme and Big Boy tomatoes. Boy, were they good. So we sold them at our little dairy store for 5 cents a pound. And they were good. So that added to my 50 cents a week, and I like that. We kids, again, we all worked at it. It was called Smashies. Derry, because Smashy was my maiden name. Hazel and Seaburn Smashy. And I never liked my last name. I thought it was just too weird until my brother married, and 2 of his kids became very, very good at tennis. So when you're playing tennis, Smash is a pretty cool name to have. In the 9th grade, our area consolidated all their country schools, and so we all went into town. So the first year that the junior high was finished, that was the year I went to 9th grade. And I went from a class of 4 to a class of a little over 300. But it wasn't really intimidating because I knew my friends from 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. So it was kind of like getting back together again, and I liked that a lot. When I was 14, my parents divorced, and that just turned everything on its heels. It was just a rough time for everybody. Dad's meanness came out, his depression came out. He forbid us from seeing my mom. So from the time I was 14 until I was married the first time,